For decades, one event has been the absolute pinnacle of submission grappling, the ADCC World Championship. It's all about legacy, prestige, and the ultimate test of a grappler's skill. It's a title that has defined the careers of legends. But now, the UFC, with its billion-dollar war chest and global brand, has drawn a line in the sand. A shocking new rule is forcing the world's best grapplers into an impossible choice: chase the UFC's money or ADCC's legacy. This isn't just a friendly rivalry, it's a battle for the very soul of jiu-jitsu, a hostile takeover bid for the future of the sport. The biggest question is, who's going to be left standing when the dust settles? We're going to break down the strategy behind the UFC's stunning ban, reveal who really wins and who loses in this high-stakes conflict, and explore what it all means for every single athlete, promoter, and fan in the world of submission grappling. The sport is being torn in two, and you need to understand why. The shot heard round the grappling world was fired in February 2026. In an interview, UFC BJJ executive and former UFC fighter Claudia Gadelha dropped an absolute bombshell. She announced that starting in 2027, any athlete who signs an exclusive contract with UFC BJJ will be completely barred from competing in ADCC. Let's be crystal clear about what this means. This isn't some simple scheduling conflict. It's a deliberate, strategic ultimatum. Gadelha said, "There are some of our exclusive athletes that we've given the ADCC to this year, but from next year on, they can only be an athlete of the UFC BJJ. The message couldn't be clearer. If you take our money, you belong to us. You will not build your name under our banner only to lend that star power to a rival." This decision is huge because for the first time in modern history, the elite talent pool of submission grappling is being intentionally split down the middle. To really get the gravity of this, you have to understand what these two organizations represent. They are the two pillars of the sport, but they couldn't be more different. The ADCC, the Abu Dhabi Combat Club World Championship, is widely seen as the Olympics of grappling. Founded back in 1998, it's a no-gi tournament that happens only every 2 years, bringing together the absolute best from every grappling style, BJJ, wrestling, sambo, judo, to crown a definitive world champion. Its prestige comes from how rare it is. Winning ADCC gold is a career-defining moment. It's about glory. It's about etching your name into history. Half the competitors earn their spot through a series of grueling global trials, while the other half are invited based on their elite reputation. It's a true crucible of the world's best talent. Then you've got the UFC's new venture, UFC BJJ. Launched in mid-2025, it's the MMA juggernaut's attempt to conquer a new corner of the combat sports world. It kicked off with a reality series, UFC BJJ Road to the Title, and held its first official event during the massive UFC International Fight Week. Their model is the total opposite of ADCC. It's not about a single monumental event. Instead, they're all about consistency. Gadelha herself framed it as a different product, stating, "Last year we did 6 events, now there are 10 events this year." The UFC is selling a different dream. Not the dream of one glorious moment every 2 years, but the dream of a stable professional career. They offer consistent events, reliable paychecks, and the massive marketing power of the UFC machine. They started signing athletes to exclusive contracts in late 2024, beginning with one of the sport's biggest pound-for-pound talents, Mikey Musumeci. And with those contracts came the golden handcuffs. This is the fundamental conflict: legacy versus livelihood. The sacred tradition of the ADCC versus the corporate structure of the UFC. For years, athletes could have both. they could fight on different shows all year and still aim for that ADCC gold. Now, the UFC is forcing them to pick a side. This move creates a schism, a hard border running right through the heart of the professional grappling community. The second Gadelha's words hit the internet, the grappling world just erupted. The reaction was fast, passionate, and almost entirely negative. It wasn't just fans on forums like Reddit calling it a monopolistic power grab. It was some of the most respected and influential figures in the entire sport. Leading the charge was Tom DeBlass, a BJJ legend and an executive at One Championship, a major UFC rival. His criticism was scathing and direct, calling the decision terrible. For DeBlass, this wasn't just business. It was an attack on the culture of jiu-jitsu. ADCC is our Olympics, he argued, stressing that there's something deep and special about winning there that you just can't replicate. He contrasted grappling's tradition of open competition with the closed-off model of MMA, saying athletes should be able to compete as often as possible to make a living. Now you're not allowing athletes to do that. For what? For control. This isn't for the athletes. DeBlass's view is especially powerful because his own organization, One Championship, is much more flexible. While they also use exclusive contracts, they've historically made exceptions for their athletes to compete in huge events like ADCC and the IBJJF Worlds. DeBlass pointed out that One just asks athletes to let them know before competing somewhere else, a policy built on trust, recognizing that the whole sport grows when its stars can fight on different stages. The UFC's new rule is the polar opposite. Then there's Craig Jones, the outspoken Australian star and founder of the super successful Craig Jones Invitational. Jones has been warning about the dangers of exclusivity for years. His argument is about pure economics and athlete power. He sees this as the first step toward an MMA-style monopoly, where one company controls everything, sets the pay, and crushes anyone who gets in their way. If they crush all the competition, you have nowhere else to go, Jones has said. What incentive do they have to pay you more? He's been critical of athletes who signed these deals even before the ban, calling it a selfish decision that hurts the bargaining power of all grapplers. For Jones, an athlete's freedom to shop around for the best fights and the biggest paydays is what keeps promoters honest. In his eyes, the UFC model is designed to destroy that freedom. The backlash wasn't just from executives. Other respected figures like BJJ black belt Gio Martinez, who has his own rivalry with UFC BJJ's top star, also publicly questioned the situation. The mood on the popular jiu-jitsu subreddit, r/BJJ, was one of dread, with users predicting the sport's progress would slow down and the talent pool would be diluted. One user summed it up perfectly. UFC is clearly trying to take their monopolistic model to another vulnerable sport on the cheap. And this isn't some far-off problem. We are already seeing the real-world consequences. Take Andrew Tackett, a phenomenal young grappler who, with his brother, won the brutal ADCC trials. Winning trials punches your ticket to the big show. But the Tackett brothers famously chose to compete in the Craig Jones Invitational instead, drawn by its massive $1 million prize. Now, Tackett has signed an exclusive contract with UFC BJJ. He has said he chose it for stability, but under this new rule, his path to ADCC glory is permanently blocked unless he leaves the UFC. He and others like him are the first generation of athletes caught in this crossfire. This is the core of the frustration. The UFC isn't just starting a new league. It's actively trying to kneecap its biggest rival by hoarding talent. It's forcing a choice that never existed before and creating deep divisions in the process. So why is the UFC really doing this? Is it, as Claudia Gadelha claimed, just about providing consistency for a pro career? Or is there something more cynical going on? To understand the UFC's strategy, you don't need to look at jiu-jitsu. You need to look at the history of MMA. What we're seeing is a carbon copy of the Zuffa playbook, the exact same strategy the Fertitta brothers and Dana White used to build the UFC into a monopoly. In the early 2000s, MMA was fragmented, just like grappling is today. You had Pride FC in Japan, Strikeforce, WEC, and others. The UFC didn't just compete with them, it systematically bought or crushed them. They bought Pride, absorbed its fighters, and shut it down. They bought WEC and Strikeforce, folded their best talent into the UFC, and eliminated the competition. The key to this whole strategy has always been the exclusive contract. By locking down the top fighters, the UFC made sure the best could only fight the best inside their octagon. This starved rival promotions of the stars they needed to survive. It's a model that has been criticized for years, leading to multiple antitrust lawsuits where fighters argue these practices unfairly keep wages down. As one fan on a forum put it, this has been the Zuffa MO since they allowed Chuck Liddell to go over for the GP and he got his ass handed to him. Stifle competition and protect the talent from being exposed. The UFC isn't entering the jiu-jitsu world to be part of the community, it's entering to own the community. They see a market that's ripe for a takeover. ADCC, with all its history and prestige, isn't a partner. It's the final boss. By banning their stars from ADCC, the UFC does two things at once. First, it chips away at ADCC's prestige. If the best fighters in the world aren't there, is it still the Olympics of grappling? Second, it elevates its own events. The only place you can see these stars will be on UFC BJJ, making it a must-watch by default. It's a cold, calculated, and historically proven business strategy, but it would be a mistake to ignore the other side of the coin. And the most compelling defense of the UFC's position comes from its star signee, Mikey Musumeci. Musumeci, the reigning UFC BJJ bantamweight champion, went on social media to push back against the criticism. His argument boils down to one simple, powerful question. How dare UFC not want to spend millions of dollars investing in jiu-jitsu events, building their athletes to get maximal exposure just to donate their athletes to help other events? From his point of view, this isn't about control. It's about return on investment. The UFC is pouring millions into a sport that has always struggled with professional pay. They're building events, marketing athletes, and providing a platform that reaches millions more fans than any other grappling promotion ever could. So why should they do all that work, only for ADCC to get the payoff by featuring a star that the UFC built? Musumeci also brought up a personal issue he has with the so-called Olympics of grappling. He pointed out that ADCC has always refused to add a 145-pound weight class, a standard division in almost every other combat sport. As a smaller athlete, this has literally blocked him from competing at his natural weight. He doesn't see ADCC as some perfectly inclusive event, but just one option to grow your brand. An option that doesn't even properly cater to him. This is where you see the huge divide in perspective. For critics like DeBlas and Jones, this is about the soul of the sport and athlete freedom. For supporters like Musumeci, it's about pragmatism, financial stability, and the right of a business to protect its investment. He speaks for every pro athlete who has struggled with inconsistent paychecks and random events. The UFC offers a solution, and for many, that solution is worth the price of admission. As one Reddit user put it, expecting athletes to sacrifice their own career prospects is crazy. This is the difficult truth at the heart of this war. The UFC is offering a devil's bargain. They promise a stable, well-paid career on a massive stage, but in return, they demand total loyalty. They are weaponizing the very financial insecurity that has plagued professional grappling for decades. So as the battle lines are drawn and athletes are forced to choose, who actually wins in this war for the soul of jiu-jitsu? The clearest winner, at least in the short term, is the UFC. With this ban, they are running a textbook market control play. They will peel away elite talent, which will slowly chip away at ADCC's claim as the one and only pinnacle of the sport. Every star that signs a UFC contract is one less star on the ADCC poster. Over time, this could create a new reality where UFC BJJ is seen as the place where the real pros compete, simply because they're on a bigger platform more often. The UFC wins control, market share, and the power to define what pro grappling looks like. But do the athletes win? That's way more complicated. For a handful of top stars, the answer is probably yes, at least financially. They're getting big, steady contracts that offer a level of security that was unimaginable in the sport just a few years ago. They get to perform on a huge stage without having to grind out seminars just to pay the bills. But this win has a cost. As Craig Jones warns, they may no longer be fighting the absolute best in the world, just the best who also signed with the UFC. That could subtly tarnish their legacy over time. For the vast majority of athletes, though, this is probably a net loss. That up-and-coming grappler who isn't a superstar yet, they just lost a huge way to get recognized. Just making it through ADCC trials can be a massive boost for your career and sponsorships. That door is now closing. They face a brutal choice: sign with the UFC and be a small fish in a giant restrictive pond, or stay independent and fight for a smaller piece of the pie. The middle class of pro grapplers is probably the biggest loser here. And what about the sport itself? This is where the biggest worries are. The most immediate result is a split in talent. For the first time, fans won't get to see dream matchups between top athletes simply because they signed different contracts. It's like telling football fans the AFC and NFC champions can't play in the Super Bowl anymore. It dilutes the competition and leaves the question of who is the best forever unanswered. This leaves us with two possible futures for submission grappling. The first is the UFC model, which leads to one central power. In this future, UFC BJJ becomes the dominant, maybe even the only major pro league. The production value is amazing, the pay for top stars is great, and the sport gets huge mainstream exposure. But it comes at the cost of freedom. Other promotions wither and die. Athlete power disappears because there's nowhere else to go for a contract. The sport becomes whatever the UFC wants it to be. The second path is the boxing model, which is a fractured landscape. In this future, the UFC's power play doesn't totally work. ADCC keeps its prestige, other promotions like One Championship and the Craig Jones Invitational keep thriving, and the talent stays split. This creates a confusing world with multiple champions in the same weight class, making it hard for casual fans to follow. But it also protects athlete freedom. Fighters can leverage offers from different promotions against each other, driving up their pay and keeping some control over their own careers. It's chaotic, but it's a competitive ecosystem. So I have to ask you, who do you think will win this battle for the soul of jiu-jitsu? The corporate machine of the UFC or the collective will of the grappling community? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.